Now it is my honor to welcome Yoan Merrier, the chair of the Transportation Safety Board of Canada. The lessons we learned through investigations into aviation accidents and incidents are critical to improving safety across our industry. Through the free and open exchange of ideas and expertise in these investigations, ALPA has partnered with our friends at the TSB and the NTSB to develop a complete understanding of why the incident happened and what we can do in the future to prevent a similar one. Chair Merrier has several years of experience in the field of federally regulated transportation, regulatory compliance, and access to justice. He has worked for the Social Security Tribunal of Canada, Transport Canada, and the Transportation of Dangerous Goods, and the Canadian Border Services Agency. Earlier in his career, he also worked as a commercial airline pilot around Montreal. Please join me in welcoming TSB Chair Yoan Merrier.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the introduction, Captain Ambrosi. It's a pleasure to be here today with you. As chair of the TSB, I'm proud to represent an organization that is committed to preventing accidents and improving transportation safety, goals that I'm sure we all share. But achieving these goals requires one key element: collaboration. As an industry, our collective effort towards safety, defined by the challenge we face and the progress we make, is how we can truly make a difference. So this year, the TSB celebrates 35 years of advancing transportation safety in Canada. In that time, we've completed over 2,000 investigation reports, released hundreds of safety communications, and issued more than 630 recommendations. Over the years, more than 80% of our recommendations, 84% to be exact, have been closed as fully satisfactory. These changes that resulted from these recommendations have had an impact not only across Canada, but around the world. Of course, that being said, I like to say that the best recommendation is not having to issue a recommendation in the first place. And so today, I thought I would talk about the impacts that we can have on safety by collaborating beyond these formal recommendations. The first aspect is the sharing of information. Operators don't have to wait for regulations to make their operations safer. That's why we make it a priority to share verified safety information with the relevant stakeholders when we can, often before an investigation report is complete. This can be done informally, for example, through a discussion or an email by the investigator in charge, or more formally using a safety letter like the examples I have on the slide behind me. When safety information is shared early, it opens the door for immediate proactive measures that can prevent further occurrences and ultimately save lives. And when the industry or the regulator takes swift action based on our early discoveries, it can reduce the risks before we publish the final report. In some cases, the steps are so effective that a recommendation is no longer needed. There's a recent example that illustrates just that. It's not in the airline world, but it's still good to illustrate my point. In June 2024, a Bell Textron 212 helicopter was supporting wildfire suppression efforts in the Northwest Territories of Canada. Shortly after takeoff, one of the main rotor blades detached, followed by the rotor head itself. The helicopter then collided with terrain, causing a post-impact fire and fatally injuring the pilot, who was the only occupant on board. Our preliminary findings pointed to the failure of the airwolf tension torsion strap, the TT strap, which caused the rotor blade to detach. We communicated these findings to Transport Canada, the Helicopter Association of Canada, and other relevant stakeholders. As a result, many operators made a proactive decision to go to ground their Bell helicopters as a precaution until more facts were known. Also in response, the FAA issued an airworthiness directive requiring the removal and prohibiting the future installation of certain TT straps. In transportation safety, progress often depends on collaboration between the regulator, industry stakeholders, and investigation agencies. Although the regulator is responsible for setting and enforcing standards, there are times when the industry takes the lead. Let me give you an example of a time when the industry responded to two of our recommendations before the regulator did. This involves a safety issue investigation, also known as a safety study, that we did in response to 27 runway incursions at the Toronto Pearson Airport, involving the two closely spaced parallel runways, also known as the SAD complex. The report for this investigation was published a bit more than 5 years ago, and it included multiple recommendations to Transport Canada and to the Greater Toronto Airport Authority. Following the investigation, the TSB recommended that Transport Canada work with operators to amend standard operating procedures so that post-landing checks occur only after landing the aircraft are clear of both active runways during when the two runways are in operation. 6 years later, Transport Canada has maintained that it will not mandate these SOP changes. However, during the assessment of this recommendation that we did earlier this year, myself and the rest of the board, we found that the risks identified in these recommendations have been significantly reduced through proactive action by the industry and other key players. For example, several Canadian airlines have voluntarily adopted the recommended procedures. Recent safety initiatives, including, enhanced in-cockpit awareness tools, improved communication protocols from NAV Canada, as well as targeted training and information sharing, have all played a role in reducing runway incursion risks. I should also mention that the GTA did quite a bit of work around the angled holding position in that area. All that to say that, obviously runway incursions are not resolved, but all of these actions have mitigated the risks associated with these specific safety deficiencies that we had identified in this safety study. As we collaborate on how we can move forward together, it's important to remember that the spirit of this collaboration also extends beyond borders. Like our NTSB colleagues here in the US, the TSB regularly works with international organizations and agencies, sharing knowledge, expertise, and insight to improve safety on a worldwide scale. We actively participate in forums such as the International Transport Safety Association, which brings together heads of investigative agencies, and contribute to various international specialist accident investigator groups. Through our participation in international investigations and through the involvement of international organizations in the TSB's work, we all contribute to and learn from these global efforts. This collaboration ensures that improvements in Canada are guided by international perspectives and enriched by global experience. Last January, the TSB deployed 2 investigators to assist the NTSB in their investigation of a CRJ-700 aircraft mid-air collision with a military helicopter in Washington, D.C. The following month, we had representatives from the NTSB, the FAA, Transport Canada, Delta, Endeavour, ALPA, and others that joined us in Toronto to assist our investigation into a collision with terrain during a landing involving a CRJ-900 aircraft. I'll get to that in a moment, but all that to mention that international collaboration is important, and like the NTSB, we are constantly involved as accredited representatives under ICAO Annex 13 in international investigations when there is a Canadian operator or a Canadian manufacturer involved, and there are a lot of them across the world. We are also sometimes delegated the conduct of an investigation in another country, like we saw earlier this week with an occurrence that happened in St. Martin. A WestJet aircraft had a hard landing and a gear collapse, and the TSB was delegated the conduct of this investigation. So we now have 3 investigators in St. Martin right now, conducting the investigation into this occurrence. However, collaboration isn't just about working across borders. It's about how we work together at every stage of an investigation. True collaboration requires more than technical expertise. It calls for trust, transparency, and open communications. One way we rise to this challenge is by reinforcing trust, both in our findings and our process. Transparency is the foundation of our credibility. From the moment an investigation begins to the final report, how we communicate matters. Take, for example, the occurrence I mentioned earlier, just to refresh everyone's memory. A CRJ-900 aircraft was flying from Minnesota to Toronto, Ontario. Upon landing, the aircraft struck the runway, after which the wing and the tail section separated from the aircraft, and a fire broke out. The fuselage came to rest slightly off the right side of the runway, upside down and facing the other direction. Once the aircraft came to rest, the occupants evacuated. This was extensively covered in the media in the minutes that followed the accident. We deployed a team of 20 investigators to the site from the air group and also the human factors branch, along with members of our comms team. It was highly publicized, gathered significant attention from both the media in Canada and the US. It even made our website crash at some point. And in response, we leveraged social media and captured on-site videos to communicate our work with the public. We began with our short video the day following the occurrence, featuring the investigator in charge at the occurrence site, who provided an update. And in the days that followed, we continued to provide updates, sharing drone footage, videos, and photos from the site, offering a behind-the-scenes look into the investigation process. We later released a preliminary report in accordance with ICAO Annex 13 that included factual information in areas of investigation. Recognizing that the way people consume information has evolved, we also created a video that broke down the technical aspect of the preliminary report into more accessible terms for the public. If you're interested in reading that preliminary report, or you haven't done so already, the QR code in the slide leads to the report. So we work hard to engage proactively with media and stakeholders on that one. It's not enough to respond to questions after the fact. We aim to stay ahead by providing information and addressing concerns early whenever possible. This not only ensures our messages heard clearly, but also keeps the fact at the forefront. Another aspect of being present in the public sphere is being transparent about our decisions, especially when we choose not to investigate a high-profile occurrence. Given the amount of occurrence reports that we have, it's not realistic for us to investigate anything, and sometimes we have to make tough choices. These decisions are made with great care, and it's crucial to explain the reasons behind them as to why we decided not to investigate something. The main criteria we have is the fact that, is there a way for us to be able to advance transportation safety by investigating a certain occurrence? That's the main criteria that we use. Clearly explaining why we're not pursuing an investigation helps the public understand our decision-making process and reassures them that we remain committed to improving safety. This example here is not in the air world, but again, it is a good example to illustrate my point. So in June 2021, a fire was reported west of a small town in British Columbia. The fire spread rapidly due to extreme heat, dry conditions, and high winds, ultimately devastating much of the town's downtown area. At the time, there were concerns that a train may have caused the fire, although there was no clear immediate evidence that nearby railway operations were linked to the fire. Because this was a high-profile incident with considerable attention on the TSB, we approached this occurrence very carefully. We launched an investigation that focused on data gathering. We analyzed evidence, reviewed operational data, conducted material analysis, and interviewed railway employees. Despite extensive efforts, no anomalies were found and no link between railway operations and the fire was established. And so we decided not to investigate. To say that the local media and the community were displeased would be an understatement. But we communicated proactively, we published an investigation update, and offered media interviews to ensure transparency. By providing consistent, honest communication and being open and present in the public space, we managed to maintain accountability and preserve credibility, especially in an age where misinformation can spread quickly. Despite decades of progress, our transportation system continues to face challenges. Rapid technological innovation, shifting regulations, and emerging risks keep the industry in a state of constant transformation. So let me switch subjects for a bit to talk about trends that we have identified through our investigations that signal areas needing further scrutiny. While this is by no means an exhaustive list, I want to draw your attention to two key observations that reflect the challenges and trends we're currently seeing. The first one is the impact and delays of changing priorities at the regulatory level, which in Canada is the Department of Transport, also known as Transport Canada. While the work of the regulator is critical to improving safety, delays in regulatory action, whether due to administrative burden or pushback from the industry, and shifting priorities are often influenced by political agenda, can hinder effective oversight, and slow the timely implementation of crucial safety measures. For example, following a fatal air ambulance helicopter accident in Ontario in 2013, we found that a combination of organizational, regulatory, and oversight deficiencies contributed to the occurrence. although the regulator had, through its inspections, identified numerous safety concerns with the operator, the oversight approach failed to address these concerns with the urgency and depth required. Because of this, the operator was not brought back into compliance in a timely manner. And ultimately led to a situation where an inexperienced flight crew was not operationally prepared to meet the challenging conditions on the night of the occurrence flight. And so we issued a recommendation, which is displayed behind me. So from our perspective, this is a common sense recommendation. But nearly a decade later, it's still active. In response, the regulator has outlined a number of ongoing initiatives, including internal reviews and projects aimed at enhancing oversight. However, all of these efforts are still in the early stages. And just to be clear, we recognize and appreciate the work that is being done, but there's still no clear plan and no defined timeline to fully address this safety deficiency. And this is just one example. There are many others where delayed regulatory response or shifting priorities can allow safety risks to persist. The second challenge I want to highlight, and is one that I've touched on earlier, is the risk of collisions from runway incursions. Collectively, the aviation industry has made gradual, incremental changes to address this risk. Individual air operators, airports, and NAV Canada have adapted procedures, added new visual cues, and improved airport surveillance. However, despite these improvements, there continues to be a consistent increase in the overall rate of runway incursions at Canadian airports. In 2024, NAV Canada reported a total of 639 runway incursions, marking the highest annual count to date. The average rate last year was 11.2 incursions per 100,000 arrivals and departures. We also investigated or are investigating a number of occurrences, and although they may not be as alarming as some of the ones we have seen in the US, it certainly reinforces having this issue on our radar for the foreseeable future. There is no single solution that will reduce the risk of runway incursions. Rather, solutions tailored for each airport, in combination with wider-reaching technological advancements, may be more effective. To wrap up, I want to reiterate a core principle we uphold at the TSB. Safety is a shared responsibility. Compliance with regulatory requirements sets the baseline, but true safety is achieved when organizations go above and beyond those standards. By embracing proactive safety initiatives, training, and innovative technologies, you protect your people and your operations, and you contribute to a broader culture of safety. Collaboration at every level within the industry, with the regulator, and internationally is essential to achieving safety and moving forward together. Lastly, I'd just like to mention that the board is currently updating its watch list as we speak. We are in the final stages. I was just at a meeting about that this morning. So we expect to publish it within the next couple of weeks. And if you'd like to stay informed on the latest investigation or watch list or any other developments, you can register to our newsletter, the TSB Review. We send it once every 3 months, and it provides all the updates with significant investigations and releases. So thank you everyone for your time today.
Thank you, Chair. Alpha pilots are always here to work with you to identify solutions. You have time for a question or two?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, we could do a couple of questions, but we're honored to have you join us today, and we really appreciate it. We got time for a question or two, so please approach the microphone if you'd like to ask. It's hard to see with these lights sometimes. Okay, I see one over there. Microphone number 2.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Gilles Boissonneau, Air Canada captain, based in Winnipeg, also the Alpha Canada vice president. Thank you for your presentation. A quick question. As the new chair of the TSB, are there any changes that you'd like to see moving forward?
You mean in my organization?
Yes.
Or
yeah.
So we, making good investigations takes time, but we are actively working on trying to reduce some of the delays to publish our investigation reports. As I mentioned earlier in my presentation, for for me, the publication of factual information very, very early in an investigation is very important, especially in the age of social media and, the 24-hour news cycle. It's very important for us to be out there early and provide factual information to correct the course when we see something false being communicated. So there's this part of it, and we did the preliminary report for the occurrence in Toronto, and we are publishing more frequent investigation updates. We have started doing that a few months ago, actually. But the other part of it is trying to streamline or report making and processes to be able to go out with findings and recommendations faster, because the quicker we can get out there, the more impact we can have.
Of course, great. Yeah, thank you for that. And just as a follow-up, is there anything that we at ALPA can do to assess, or is anything that TSB would like to see from us, or you guys from an association might appreciate coming from ALPA?
Good. Well, any information that you can share with us is always welcome. I had a discussion with Captain Ambrosi earlier about fatigue. Fatigue is a good one, because we have this. It is a concern. I know it's a concern for ALPA. It's a concern for the board as well. But we are not often able to tie fatigue risk factors with the causal and contributory findings of an occurrence. Because we have a methodology to do fatigue analysis, but sometimes establishing causality is difficult. So this is one element where any data that we can have on a topic like this can help us build our case.
Great. Okay. Merci beaucoup.
Hi, my name is Zev Napti. I'm with Cargojet. I just had a quick question in regards to the 2024-25 report that the TSB released. Out of the 28 outstanding, I think, assessments, only one was rated as fully satisfactory, and I think that was A1702. And my question is, going forward, how is the TSB looking to increase or accelerate this closure rate, and what it's doing or what levers it's using to do that, and how could maybe ALPA play a role in that?
Yeah, great question. So as I mentioned earlier in my speech, we have about 84% of our recommendations over the year that were closed as fully satisfactory. But it's true that this year in the air mode we were only able to close one. But every year we review all of our outstanding recommendations. We go back to the stakeholder that is to whom the recommendation was addressed. In most cases, it's Transport Canada, and we ask them to provide updates as to what they are doing now to address this, and we assess the response, provide a rating. So that's how we keep the pressure by every year going back to them, and the next step after that is putting the issue on our watch list, because then it brings the public a lot of public attention to that issue, and it adds pressure on the regulator to be able to move forward on these issues. So we found that the recommendations along with the watch list are very effective to get things moving.
Thank you.
All right, thank you again, sir. Appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
Thank you for coming.